Halloween is once again upon us, and because of this, I'm obligated to do a game around that general theme. And let's face it, when we're talking about monsters and the general creepy, crawly atmosphere that Halloween brings, the first thing we think of is zombies. And if that's not the first thing you think of, well, let's just say you're not on my team when the zombie apocalypse occurs, because I'm not having someone that thinks of the candy first come my side to potentially save my ass. So anyway, I checked out Doom 3 last year. On keeping with the zombie theme, we're going to discuss Left 4 Dead 2 this time around. Before you bother asking me, I'm not doing the original game first, because Left 4 Dead 2 really isn't much of a sequel as it is an upgrade. In fact, there's really no reason to get Left 4 Dead 1 now, because all the content is available in Left 4 Dead 2. So why would you want to play the original when you can access all the content in the sequel with the upgraded engine and larger selection of weapons? Don't get me wrong, I like that Valve did this, but I'd be awfully pissed off if I shelled out the money for both games just to realize that the first game is practically included in the second. Wait, I did buy both games. Oh, fuck me. Isn't that a kick in the balls? Oh well, at least I didn't full price for them, I think. Anyway, the nice thing about Left 4 Dead 2 is that, at least this time around, there's a bit more of a story presence. You play as 4 survivors trying to make it from an abandoned rooftop extraction zone to a potentially new safe zone in each of the campaigns. The biggest difference is that, unlike in the first game, where each campaign starts out in a completely different story arc, the campaigns of Left 4 Dead 2 happen sequentially. If you play them in order, they actually make a little bit of sense. For example, at the end of the 4th campaign, you escape a boat after refilling it with fuel. When you begin the 5th and technically final campaign, the 4 survivors are exiting the boat to find a military extraction area. It's nice to have this, although the developers still don't tell you how the fuck the zombies came into existence. The bastards. I mean seriously guys, if you're going to include a shit ton of zombies, both regular and special, give me a little bit of backstory here. What the hell should I be fearing? And why are these 4 immune? Oops, spoiler. Tough shit. You probably already knew that already. So, who are these 4 unlucky survivors that are Left 4 Dead? Huh? You see what I did there? Yeah, it might happen more. First off, it's Nick. A guy who looks slick but turns out to be a con guy. Don't worry, you can trust him in this game. I think his conning days are pretty much over. Rochelle is the standard female lead, and is usually the first to die. Just kidding, she doesn't really have any higher statistics at dying, but she'll die just the same as all the others. Coach is a former, coach, and he's a bit overweight and always wondering if there's food ahead, especially in the carnival level. Finally, you have Ellis, your typical redneck that enjoys his racing. Other than the model used, all of these characters are the same and have no special skills or abilities that will help them survive over the others. So as for the character selection, it really just comes down to whether you want to play a con man, a woman, fat dude, or a redneck. You can also just leave the selection to the random option, where the computer just gives you a character. Also, depending on what mode you play, you might be given a random character as well. The gameplay modes are where Left 4 Dead 2 really shines. There's almost a dozen of them, and that's not even including every single mutation. You have your standard campaign, with an option to play solo or online with 3 other survivors. The mutation mode is interesting, where it's a single-player game with some twists. Like where you're constantly losing health over the campaign, you only have chainsaws as weapons, or even only one survivor having to complete the whole campaign. Realism is a twist on the single-player campaign where you can't see your fellow survivors' outlines when they're not in sight. This may not sound difficult, but when one of them falls behind and gets trampled by infected, you might be wishing you would have hung around and saved them. Versus mode is probably the most common, and is a mode where, in addition to the 4 survivors, up to 4 other players can play the infected to stop the survivors from completing the maps. Teams do switch sides, and it comes down to the winner being the team that could travel the farthest without being stopped. Realism versus just what it sounds like. Survival is also pretty self-explanatory. You have your survivors who are stuck in a room and need to last as long as physically possible. Finally, you have Scavenge, which mimics the final map in the first campaign where you have to grab gas cans to fill up a vehicle and survive. I've only ever really attempted this mode once, and found it to be pretty boring. But those are all the game modes for Left 4 Dead 2. There's quite a lot to do, but that doesn't disguise the fact that there's still only 5 total campaigns in the base game. Don't get me wrong, thanks to the updates to the game, there's now almost a dozen, due to 2 shorter campaigns that were added, and the 5 added in from Left 4 Dead 1. There's also the add-on campaigns, where you can play maps created by a community. Valve has always been big on this kind of stuff, which is one of the reasons I do like Valve. Even in other games, such as Counter-Strike and Half-Life, they fully support players reskinning their characters, weapons, and even creating their own maps. I don't want to get too sidetracked though, so let's continue talking about Left 4 Dead 2. You don't need to play the campaigns in order, but if you want to attempt to follow the path that the survivors are taking, it's recommended. Each of them range from either 3 to 5 sections per campaign, and they are each finished in about 30 to 60 minutes, depending on factors such as whether you know the map or not, and if you're just gunning for the safe room, or if you're methodically searching rooms for equipment. If you're playing by yourself, be forewarned. The AI can be pretty stupid at times. It will follow you around, so if you don't know where you're going, the game won't have any of the AI players point anything out. You'll have to fall victim to a special infected attack, and the AI will often ignore you for a bit until you're incapacitated, and then realize, oh shit, we got a man down. Or you might be running to save another survivor while you're low in health, but an AI teammate may see you that you need the help, and decide to use a medkit on you. That's fine and all, but it stops you in your tracks and you have no way to cancel it, other than just killing your teammate outright. So they might save you, but in the meantime, your other teammate that really needs the help might perish. It's pretty sucky. They also like to shoot you a lot. Granted, if you shoot them as a human player, they take friendly fire damage. But if the AI shoots you, you will jerk like you're hit but won't take any damage. Yeah, that's completely fair. They also bitch when you hit them. A lot. But the AI does enjoy to walk in front of your crossfire. In contrast though, the enemy infected AI is actually pretty smart. They'll set up ambushes and often gang up on you when you least expect it. There's also something called the director, which is essentially a way for the game to adjust the difficulty, depending on how well you're doing. If you're hardly able to stay alive, the game may adjust it so that you may see less zombie hordes and fewer special infected. On the other hand, if you're just mowing down anything in your path without a single problem, you might suddenly find a couple hundred zombies running right towards you. The game will also do this frequently if you can't figure out where to go or stand still in the same general area for too long of a time. It's kind of a motivation that says, move your ass. And it also guarantees that no two playthroughs are going to be exactly the same. I keep mentioning the special infected, so I guess I should discuss them a bit. You have the Smoker, which is a tall guy who is fairly weak, but yields a massive tongue that can entangle you and drag you a distance away. Again, it doesn't do a ton of damage, but keep in mind other infected can come and grab you while you're sitting there unable to do anything. The next special infected is the Boomer, which is physically weak but incredibly annoying for its bile it spits and spews when it explodes. This bile attracts hordes of zombies, so when it lacks in physical strength, it makes up for in sheer enemy numbers. If this bastard is close to you, it's best to smack it away with a melee push before destroying it. Next is the Hunter, an agile zombie that pounces on you and tears you to shreds with its claws. Unlike the previous two I mentioned, this one is a bit tougher, both in its defensive and offensive abilities. If you're really lucky, you can hit a Hunter with the butt of your gun before it reaches you, but it requires amazing timing. The fourth special infected is the Charger, a massive beast that, well, attacks by charging at you. It'll bowl over anything in its path, and if it latches onto a survivor, it'll just keep smashing them into the pavement, doing some pretty hefty damage. The Spitter is next, and is the real long-range sniper of the zombies. Similar to the Boomer, you'll want to stay away from close proximity, because the acid it spits is pretty damaging, and it'll die in a puddle of it. Finally, you have the Jockey, one of the most annoying zombies of the game. It doesn't really look like much, but if this fucker hops on your head, he's going to gain control on where you're going. It's actually difficult to smack him off, and melee weapons are actually preferred in order to prevent friendly fire gun damage. Those are the common special infected, but there's still two more that are a bit more rare and powerful. First off is the Witch. She is completely optional to fight in most circumstances, and I usually prefer to walk around her. She seems to be the only zombie that still has a bit of feelings left, and she's lamenting her current form. However, if you shoot at her or get too close, she'll turn her rage on you. Although you can manage to kill her in one hit with a shotgun if you're lucky, it's not easy, and it's best that if you want to kill her, to get some distance. Oh, and if you're the one that disturbs her, she'll make a beeline to you and not bother with anybody else. And as the coup de grace, no matter how much health you have, she'll knock you flat on your ass in one hit. The only saving grace is that she usually can't get enough of an attack in to outright kill you, but it is possible. You'll also know when you're in range of a witch when the music changes and you hear her crying. As a final note, the witch is the only special infected that you can never play as during a versus game. Finally, we have the tank. A big ass motherfucker that is all strength. It'll take a lot to bring one down, and he hits hard. The only way to effectively outrun him is if you're at green health, but even then, it's best just to focus as much firepower as you can towards him to down them quickly. Fire works really well, just as several shotgun blasts to the face. In addition to just slapping you around, he can pick up chunks off the ground and throw them at you with surprising accuracy. In addition to the music changing to an epic tune, you'll know he's coming because, well, look at how big it is. In Versus mode, if you have a competent player playing as a tank, the round is probably going to end. It's pretty frustrating when you're doing well and find out that an AFK player is a tank, though. There's also a new type of zombie that varies depending on the campaign you're running. They don't have any differences in attack to the other regular zombies, but instead usually have a different supportive or defensive ability. The undead scientists have full body suits that make them fireproof. The construction workers are immune to the attention-grabbing effect of the pipe bombs, and are also immune to headshots. The mudmen found in the swamp splatter your screen with mud, drastically affecting your visibility. These guys aren't hard to defeat, but they can slow you down a little bit. So what kind of weaponry do you get to use to beat back the flesh eaters? Thankfully, you get much more than what was included in the first game. The biggest addition that everyone had been talking about when the game first came out was the melee weapons. You can bash zombie skulls in with objects such as cricket bats, frying pans, machetes, fire axes, and of course your occasional chainsaw. There's no real advantage with one weapon over another, other than the short range differences. Most of the melee weapons will kill the regular infected in one hit, where of course multiple hits are needed against the special infected. I'd actually recommend against using the melee weapons against the special infected, because as a general rule of thumb, you don't want to get that close to them. There's also no damage threshold for the weapons, as they won't break after a certain amount of uses. Of course, the chainsaw does take a slight exception, and that's limited to the amount of gas it has. In addition to the melee weapons, you do have your selection of firearms. You begin each campaign with nothing more than a pistol or two, but can eventually upgrade your arsenal to your standard assault rifles, shotguns, and sniper rifles. Each one has their pros and cons, but it's definitely nice to see the game have a larger variety. You also have more supportive weapons this time around. In first Left 4 Dead, you only had Molotovs, pipe bombs, medkits, and pills. But this time around, you also have access to a bile jar, which attracts zombies to a target just like a boomer, a defib unit, which resuscitates dead players, and an adrenaline shot, which considerably speeds up your player. This is especially helpful when trying to help an incapacitated teammate too. While this new equipment isn't as common as, say, the medkits or the pills, you're still there to change up the pace a little bit. So how does the game actually work? Well, it's simple. You start at point A and need to get to the safe room at point B. Sometimes the path is linear, but other times you may run around a few circles when trying to find it, which in itself is pretty frustrating. Sometimes you'll think you're heading the right way, get turned around by a jockey or a smoker, then start heading off in the opposite direction without realizing it. In any case, as long as one human player gets to the safe house, the campaign proceeds. However, if all human survivors die in a normal game, you start over at the last safe house. Let me explain this. You have your health bar, but if you get to 0 health, you are considered incapacitated and lay on the ground, only able to use your sidearm. You can't move at all, but you can rotate your view and attempt to assist by shooting off any infected near you. A teammate can attempt to assist you, which takes time. If they get you off the ground, your health will be, for lack of better words, meshed, which means it'll be steadily draining. Again, if you hit 0, you fall again. If you fall 3 times without healing up with a medkit, you die, but not necessarily permanently. I'll get to that in a second. The mesh status can be cured with a medkit, which is preferred. You can also use pills for a temporary fix, but it's not meant to be a long-term cure. Also, you'll know when you're about to bite the dust when the screen becomes monochrome. Anyway, if you do manage to die, you can still be saved. Around the map are a few rooms where you might be trapped. If a teammate can get to one of these rooms and rip open the door, you're back in the game. It's a pretty weird way of reviving you, especially considering that the game says you're dead. Oh well. Also, getting to a safe house revives all dead characters and stabilizes all players with decreasing health bars. You keep killing zombies and hitting safe rooms until you hit the final stage of the campaign, also called the finale. In it, there's often an objective that needs to occur before you can finish off the map. In the first campaign, you'll need to find several gas cans laying around the mall to fuel up a racing car for a hasty exit. In the Hard Rain campaign, it's simply to hold off the massive slaughter of zombies during a heavy storm until a boat comes to pick you up. These situations often deal with dozens of special infecteds and at least 2 or 3 tanks. I've already seen one campaign spawn 2 tanks at one time. It's very unpleasant to say the least. In any case, it really drills down to how well you are at high-stress situations, because your reflexes have to be tight to dodge everything coming at you, and still be able to escape when possible. Perhaps one of the biggest downfalls of Left 4 Dead 2 especially when it was first released, was a lack of content. Let's take out the community's contributions and all that extra crap that was an afterthought, and you end up with the same complaint I had back in Left 4 Dead 1. You only have 5 campaigns. At most, that's 25 stages. And if you figure an hour a campaign, or 15 minutes per stage, take your pick, you're looking at about 5 hours of gameplay for the regular game. Add in the versus mode if you want, but it's still the same maps. Survival is fun, but it's not going to extend the playtime too long. I'd say if anything, you probably have maybe 10 hours of content before you start getting bored of the game. Now, let's take a look at the Xbox version. I read that Xbox owners don't even have the capability to play the community content, and that it's exclusive to the PC version. So they're even more screwed than us PC players. They'll also have to buy some of the extra crap as DLC. Yeah, I think Xbox owners got the shaft on that deal. The music is very atmospheric, playing only when necessary. The director amps up the music's tempo when hordes, zombies, or a tank approaches, but other than that, there's really no music. All it's left is the occasional lines spoken by the heroes and the noises of the zombies walking around. This actually just helps to solidify the game as being sort of creepy, although no real quote-unquote boo moments ever really happen. The graphics, on the other hand, are pretty well done. While no real improvement can be seen between the two games, there were some nice touches added to several of the campaigns, most notably the hard rain maps. You regularly grab gas cans from a truck stop for an escape boat that's waiting for you. You actually need to traverse the area and then come back the same way, and all the stuff you take is gone on the way back, so you actually have to ration your supplies much more. In addition to this, though, a storm starts around the 3rd chapter and gets very, very hard to actually see what's around you. It's amazing how well Valve did with this. It makes you feel like you're actually in the storm, and if you're playing realism on this map, you're probably screwed as soon as you leave the safe house. And of course, since there's zombies in the game, you need gore, right? Well, there's plenty of that. Use melee weapons and you can completely dismember the undead, which is always fun. Want to eviscerate a zombie and watch the entrails all spill out? Well, you can with the right equipment. Toss a pipe bomb and watch the crowd of enticed infected explode in a nice red mist. It's also strangely satisfying to explode a boomer and watch its severed bottom half rock back and forth. I guess I'm just one sick bastard for enjoying that stuff. As much as I do like Left 4 Dead 2, I must admit that it just doesn't seem to add enough new content onto the first one to make it really stand out. In fact, if it wasn't for the community's contributions, I probably would have totally stopped playing it years ago. Every once in a while I do get the urge to play it though, so it often remains installed just in case I need to feel that craving for zombie mayhem. Overall, Left 4 Dead 2 isn't a bad game, but it really could have used a bit more new stuff other than just weapons and maps. However, it's still fun, and that's all that counts. Final score? 8 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.
That's what it's said about fire.
Shoot me! Got it! Reloading! Reloading! Grenade! Archer!
That gun store's
Reloading!